on the front lines of any war. If whoever's on the other side, that's who you shoot. You don't have time to negotiate or say, okay, well, that person looks a little bit like me, so I better not shoot him. That person gonna shoot you.
Class outlaws on all sides. We got the same drama on the south side. We got the same drama on the east side. We got the same drama. So it's one side love, one nation. Now we can hop off into some gangster shit, or reverse this shit and get out rid of enemies. Nigga, you look just like me. What's sense when they killing each other in their street? Listen up, all this guns down between us. We was going the right way and coming the fuck up. Don't money and turf ain't worth your life. Doing it for the stripes like a strike. We all hungry like a dog, starving for the law. With the Panthers, the Crips and Blood. See how they targeting us. Ignorant yet intelligent plus. We all fail. Nah, it ain't a game to us. Outlaws, RBG, mask and gloves. Gotta stick to the code, can't change it up. East, west, north, south, it's all the same to us. We all struggling to hustle and to get us a cut. On the north side, we got the same drama. On the south side, we got the same drama. On the west side, we got the same drama. So it's one side, one law, one back in 93. I was in Chi-Town, the south side, and all hoods looked the same from the outside. Bill Clinton came through on some gangster shit. Started making up laws that would change some shit. Started giving 3 strikes, niggas hanging quick. And if you bang with your clique, it's the same, that's it. It's like violent crime with the gun of the night. And you're gone, writing letters to your son and your wife. And the songs up, all sides running the truth. Load up the weapon, y'all repping, ready to shoot. 21 guns, loot, operating under thugs. All in the war, we are like armed troops. No warning, steps out of the pistol. They're responsible for honor. I promise you, it's the principle. Yeah, we got it. Revolutionary black race. The food, the code we abide. On the north side, we got the same drama. On the south side, we got the same drama. On the west side, we got the same drama. So it's one side, one law, one thought, one worldwide. Bonafide and I'm solid. Wanna be a ride, I try, I can't hide it. I love being me, I swear it ain't nothing like it. All my life I've been fighting, sorta like Tyson. I ain't been around the globe, never fit, never fold. Yo, it is what it is, that's exactly how I told it. No, it ain't over, it ain't never gonna be over. I'm cash, I'm a soldier. No man know it all, gotta grind before you ball. Stay committed to your cause, handle business protocols, plan, plot, strategize. Only niggas that'll ride, sword and miracles. Most wanna unify in the struggle. Drama's common, same problem. Oakland to Brooklyn, Atlanta to Harlem. This side we're throwing up black fist with pride and honor. Cause we're here to divide and conquer. Divide and conquer, divide and conquer. Yeah, DPs, outlaws, oh yeah, You can't sell dope forever, it's the remix. Can't sell dope forever, it's the remix. You can't sell dope forever, it's the remix. Stay on some outlaw RPG shit. It ain't too many dope dealers retiring. It ain't too many old prostitutes vacationing on the islands. Instead of knock them down, my focus is to inspire them. Stop worshiping money and worship something higher up. Don't get me wrong, cuz I done been there. Bottom of the barrel, man, it ain't shit there. No food, no love, whole lot of kids there. Hand me down footwear, we got put here. She wanna have a baby, what? Cause he got good hair. But he ain't got no job and she on welfare. All he do is go raw, she do the blow job. So 06 Bonnie and Clyde, life is so hard. I'm between the rock and the hard places. Looking to the sky and there's no side of God face. You can't get a break. See my people all stuck in the slump. Like we just can't get over the honey. We need some motivation. We need some inspiration. We need to be more creative in ways to get paper. The block can have your ass in the box for decoration. Nigga, all I'm saying is this. All I'm saying is this, homie. You can't sell dope forever. You can't sell coke forever. You can't sell smoke forever, baby. You can't sell X forever. You can't sell sex forever. We gotta get ourselves together. My nigga can't sell dope forever. Can't sell coke forever. Can't sell smoke forever, baby. You can't sell X forever. Can't sell sex forever. We gotta get ourselves together. My nigga, every new nigga think he not gonna get caught. The same thing that next man thought sitting in court. It's nothing new under the sun. It's been done. It's a million niggas locked up. You just another one that got caught up in it. Like the government intended harm with a system on the bottom of the pyramid. It's mainly set up. That's why they call it a trap. It's invested with informants, snitches and rats. So watch your back if you in it. Get in and get out. Invest in your future. Gotta try to find another route. Cause this war on drugs is just a war on us. And the wrong time to see it is when you win them cuffs on that bus. Crushed straight they headed to the big house. Looking at so much time, you might never get out. If you get down this route, watch out for you crash, boy. You don't want to see them red sirens on the dashboard. Man, what the fuck is these niggas talking about, man? Man, I got 100 keys coming in right now. Nigga can't sell dope forever. I've been selling dope since I was 2. Nigga, what you mean, nigga? I'm a motherfucking hustler, nigga. I got 85 cars, nigga. You can't sell dope forever. You can't sell coke forever. You can't sell smoke forever, baby. You can't sell X forever. You can't sell sex forever. We gotta get ourselves together, homie. You can't sell dope. Yeah. Once lost disciples, their friends, together. As I embellish, mentally I nourish. Resuscitate a mind state that is perished. We shall inherit this blood required back to earth. We rise out of spiritual darkness. 6,000-year curse. The lost disciples bound to the midst of the bottomless pit. Trapped behind the gates of the wicked wilderness. I hear the sounds of the trumpets blowing across the heavens. It's calm, prepared for the storm of the sevens. The bad, the disciple, the holy exalter, condemning those who sacrificing babies on the altar. I hear the cries of innocent black babies who are aborted and unmercifully slaughtered. Loud screams echo skulls of baby slaves turning over in their graves. The white sheets are like white flags. You need to wave it to the soldier of the Lord, the warrior King David. I come to kill and crucify those who trick and lie in the eyes of the Most High. The pale-faced devil race caught the soy germ, grafted from original black man's sperm. Thin-blooded beak, grafted brain punk. Your powers are thrown in mind. You drunk, funky skunk. How dare you use Jesus' name to shoot a fruity religion? My tongue be the sport, to slash you with precision. The justice system is his, the court only acquit him. And 85% of y'all are going to hell with him. The walls of hell are closing in. Disciples, he rose again. The sons of man, chosen men. Like lightning, striking from the east. The holy psychiatrist, fourth disciple, and killer priest. Unlimited bounce of energy, striking the enemy, the righteous vicinity. That be penalty. So come on, let's swing it low, swing it, carry it. Pick up the righteous vote, and you can carry it to a new home. And identity for my people, so that will be the penalty. And for my peace, I got battle. Keep your eyes on the prize and your eyes up. And you should laugh, but you can sing it loud enough. Listen out to the right, this thing bucket and rough. And y'all get on down. Come on now, get on down. Swing it on sweet chariot. Get on down. Come on now, get on down. Swing it on sweet chariot. I'm hiking in a wardrobe, sharpen your sword. We must be aware. To acknowledge them used to deceive us. You've been plagued with them into the Jesus. You worship false portraits of Jesus. The grafted image you worship is Jesus. I hear the snap of my great-great-grandfather's neck in a noose, hanging from a tree, ripped and mentally abused. Visions of great-great-cousins running across the field, unarmed, ran down and killed. I be the star to dispel the darkness cast upon your soul by inhabitants of Mount Corpus. We praise the dead and not the true and living. Kill Jesus and sad and die for their religion. So come on, let's swing it home, sweet chariot. Up the right to go, and yo, to carry it to a new home and identity for my peace song. That will be the penalty. And for my peace, I got battle. Keep your eyes on the prize and your eyes above. And you should ask, but you can sing it loud enough. Listen out to the right, stay running around. And y'all get up and down. Come on now, get up and down. Swing it on sweet chariot. Get up and down. Come on now, get up and down. Swing it on sweet chariot. Swing it on down. 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 Pick up the right slow, your chariot. Dedicated, not to America's top model, but to the natural girls right next door. How they say in Avatar, I see you. This Hollywood world so pretentious. Every other girl got a perm or extensions, but you don't even really wear lipstick. Still your beauty is a natural mystic. Indigenous, strong cheekbone from your lineage. Not what the mainstream image is. Natural hair is your heritage, but to see it without chemicals is rare as the pyramids. I was coming from the gym again, bumping Tupac, never call you bitch again. She crossed the street, melanin glistening, felt the energy. Something about you so interesting. The prototype Eve from Genesis, ghetto empress, Nefertiti resemblance. So sweet, so street and genuine, real black girl, I salute your existence. I can see us just kicking it, building an intimate friendship, more than just hitting it. Down to earth like greens and cornbread. She don't need no weaves or contacts. Not judging other girls that got that. I'm just saying you the truth, never doubt that. Cause you got that.
Beauty's within, not just on the surface. The skin that you're in, you're already perfect. They got nothing on you, baby. Nothing on you, baby. Beautiful girls come in all types of flavors. When you love yourself, it's always gonna be haters. They got nothing on you, baby. Just keep doing you, baby.
This is going out to my African queen. Dark skin, light skin, everything between. Looking so good when you step up on the scene. Smelling so sweet, so fresh and so clean. Even though we don't see you on the flat screen, ain't no doubt about what you got in them jeans. I don't mean denim, it's your family tree. Yeah, it's all about red, black, and that green. For Gianisa and for Lena, and for all the pretty little girls. Going out to my mama, my favorite woman, and for all the women in the world. No, they don't love you on the radio, and they try to play you in the video, but you so beautiful and natural. Oh, oh, oh.
Beauty's within, not just on the surface. The skin that you're in, you're already perfect. They got nothing on you, baby. Nothing on you, baby. Beautiful girls come in all types of flavors. When you love yourself, it's always gonna be haters. They got nothing on you, baby. Just keep doing you, baby.
Happy Mama's Day from deadpress.com.
Yeah, know what I'm saying? Motherfucker Mitch Williams killer.
Dedicated,
Rap came from us. It started in the South Bronx. It started with conscious rappers. So to my brothers and sisters who are rappers, see, you're part of a scheme, but you don't realize you are an unwitting collaborator in a scheme that is to destroy you and your future.
Let's be very clear, I ain't here to drink beer, smoke weed, shoot the breeze, and break bread with you. I'm only here to resurrect the living dead with you. Thought it was some kind of a game, I'm not playing with you. I got the Moorish warlords with Moroccan short swords, Ethiopians with white face camouflage. Already disciplined and ready for that sabotage. You listen to Minaj? Word? You should kill yourself and everybody that you came with. Arrangements out of jurisdiction, no arraignment. My name gets mentioned through the ethers, through high frequency speakers. Certified 45, get in line. Make this revolution rap your favorite pastime. Make listen to Coon Tune your very last time. Last time he was CO and now he's gangstified. Pushing keys, catching bodies, man, somebody lying. I'd rather listen to that guy noise levitate with fly boys, organize an army, band dead prayers. Understand I'm not a missionary, just the devil's adversary. Extraordinary, compliment the feds. And most listening are subject to conditioning. They need a hook, something snap to pull them in. I truly sympathize. I hope this pretty singing satisfies. Now should we get back to business then? Separating gods from the nigga men. Separating chicken heads from the heroines. They tell me constantly that I should change my content. You're just too conscious. Maybe you should narrow in. Rhyme more about that street like heroin. Make it amplify, glorify the hell you're in. But where the hell you been? Clearly you don't know me then. Spit flame, ethanol, Jada Pinkett set it off. I gang bang on opposition till his head is off. His arm, leg, all nailed to a cross. You're not a mob boss, Florentini, Machiavelli. Closest you are to Italian, it's salsa spaghetti. The flow is deadly, hip hop jihad medley. They could tell I was a rebel the moment they met me. Gotta respect me, the 85ers wanna sex me. Occupied by the five, still I let them sweat me. You can bet me, Phoenix if they try to dead me. And the Republic of gorillas get ready to wreck me. I pull verses from my spleen for the have-nots who seem caught between the rocks and the hard spots. And most listening are subject to conditioning. They need a hook, something snappy just to pull them in. I truly sympathize. I hope this pretty singing satisfies. Now should we get back to business then? I'm not the only one can tell that something's going on. We hustle harder every day and barely holding on. These big banks getting breaks that will be gully on. And they'll freeze your assets, keep your scullies on. The same Babylon upgraded red bottom. And he was about that revolution till the feds got him. My man Scott got 3 to 5 for a bag of weed. But be a priest and rape boys walk scot-free. I bet you thinking that I'm kidding cause I'm throwing stones. It isn't me, it's ancient maces in my chromosomes. Impatient ancestors raging through my ribosomes. See scrolls translated through a microphone. The freedom banger, hanger, Margaret Sanger. Planned Parenthood in every hood would like to thank her. Bankers, Rockefeller, Bilderberg, Unicom, DuPont, IBM, UNICEF, and Viacom. My verbal firearm annihilate the infrastructure. Comedic lexicon, cause I don't speak the tongue of suckers. I've earned degrees of the royal pedigrees and leave a man 16 in my afterbirth. Still, most listening are subject to conditioning. They need a hook, something snappy just to pull them in. Just was.
I guess that's my cue. Making sure we're on air. See how many people joining us, 2 participants so far. Guess that's my cue to begin the broadcast. 1 second, I'm just adjusting some things, making sure that I'm right and exact. Okay, making sure that I'm right. Okay, here we go. Hotep, Black Power family, Dashan Farad, standing in tonight for the attorney at war, Dr. Malik Zul Shabazz, who is the national chairman of the New Black Panther Party, as well as the founder and executive director of Black Lawyers for Justice, based out of the Washington, D.C. area. For those of you who may not be aware who I am, I'm a journalist. I'm affiliated. I work with Dr. Boyce Watkins at yourblackworld.com. I'm also the communications director for the DC-based community service organization, Foresight for Life. I've had the honor working with the Movement magazine. I'm also, affiliated with the GoPro Radio Network. which is based out of New York City. You can Google me. But of course, this night is not about me. This is about us, the Black nation, the worldwide Black nation. Uh, People within my circle, we don't refer to Black people as being a minority because we're not the minority, as Brother Malcolm X has stated. We are actually a part of a world majority. Excuse me, I'm adjusting the lighting, making sure that you all can see me. I'm noticing that my glasses are giving off a glare. I actually know better because people have told me that since I'm on air all the time, I should get the non-glare glasses. But anyway, tonight, family, we're going to be discussing for the duration until about 9 p.m. Eastern, the 10-point platform of the new Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. And of course, we'll be discussing as it relates to the original 10-point platform of the original Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. For those of you who may not know my history, I have the honor of serving in the new Black Panther Party. Ironically, I joined when I was finishing undergrad in 2001, when I was 24 years old, under the leadership of Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz, several months after the passing or the transitioning of our Black Power General, National Chairman, the immortal Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, Ibaye Ashe, pouring water to the earth in honor of the ancestors whose birthday is coming up his birthday is on January 12th. This year in Brooklyn, Sister Ya Asantiwa, who is also a member of the new Black Panther Party, she usually has a program held in his honor. And of course, just to let you know, we're going to be discussing Brother Khalid tonight in terms of his leadership of the new Black Panther Party. But anyway, Sister Ya Asantiwa in Brooklyn on the 12th January, on his birthday, we'll be having a program in Brooklyn. And the keynote speaker is Dr. Umar Johnson. Sister Ya has been holding a celebration in honor of Brother Khalid for a long time now. And several people have keynoted it on occasions, primarily Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz, who was a top student of Dr. Khalid, and then later Dr. Umar Johnson. So it's like Attorney Shabazz and Dr. Johnson have taken turns, those main two, keynoting these celebrations in honor of our Black Power General. So, family, tonight we're going to be discussing the 10-point platform. Now, just to let you know, to give you a background of the 10-point platform, regardless of which formation, whether it is the original Black Panther Party, Black Panther Brigade, the various groups that came out of the original Panther Party that was founded in 1966, October 15, 1966, by brothers Huey P. Newton, Dr. Huey P. Newton, and Bobby Seale, Huey P. Newton, Phi Beta Sigma, my frat brother. They formed the 10-point platform for the organization. They primarily, of course, there were other people that were involved, but the 10-point platform serves as the agenda, the foundation of the organization. And regardless of which formation that you may follow or come encounter, all of them have a 10-point platform. The new Black Panther Party is no different. So the 10-point platform, it outlines what the original party was trying to accomplish, what the new Black Panther Party is trying to accomplish. And of course, the various formations, new Black Panther Party included, stand on the shoulders of the original Panther Party. So when Brother Khalid Abdul Muhammad, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, was the national chairman, he always would admonish the Panthers under his leadership not to refer to what Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale founded as the old Black Panther Party. He always instructed us to refer to that as the original Black Panther Party, on whose shoulders that we stand. Now, keep in mind, yes, there have been differences between some of the members of the original Panther Party and the new Black Panther Party, but don't let the white media tell you that every single original Panther is against the new Black Panther Party. Even under Brother Khalid Abdul Muhammad, you had original Panthers, and even now, original Panthers in the new Black Panther Party. Some of them serving as advisors, some of them serving as foot soldiers, and even as officers, even some serving on the National Central Committee. Okay, so don't let people outside of our community or confused Negroes confuse you, or try to confuse you. So we're going to get right to it right now. And I'm going to give you just a background of the Black Panther Party. Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. First of all, I would describe the new Black Panther Party, just like the original Panther Party, is an amalgamation of various philosophies. Amalgamation means a mixture into one. Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, Dr. Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, both were inspired by the various Black liberation movements at that time. The Nation of Islam, the Kwame Toure's organization, All African Revolutionary People's Party. Okay, they were inspired by Black nationalist organizations and even by some of the civil rights organizations, such as the NAACP. Some of the members of the original party were members of the NAACP and Nation of Islam and various other organizations. They were started at a time when many African Americans were becoming disenchanted with the nonviolent philosophy of the immortal Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Okay, many of them had begun to listen to Malcolm X's speeches, and the best example of this would be the SNCC organization, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They were listening to Brother Malcolm's tapes, and they became disenchanted with the nonviolent philosophy of Dr. King and most of the civil rights leaders at that time, and the assimilationist ideas that were being put forth by many civil rights leaders. And so they begin to move more towards Black nationalism, armed struggle. Well, Huey and Bobby were in that way. They weren't members of the SNCC organization, but they were still, they were a part of that generation that Black people that took on the philosophy that many members of SNCC took on. By the way, keep in mind, H. Rap Brown, Brother Imam Jamil Al-Amin, was in SNCC at that time. Him and Kwame Toure, him and Brother Mukasa Ricks. And H. Rap Brown joined the Panther Party. Now he's currently serving time in jail for a crime that he didn't commit. And we're asking you to free Jamil out. We're demanding that you free Imam Jamil Al-Amin and all political prisoners. We say free them all. Okay, so anyway, Bobby and Huey were inspired not just by many of the Black nationalist groups and the civil rights organizations, but they were also inspired by a lot of leftist teachings, a lot of communist teachings, Marxism, which is, that's what distinguishes the original Panther Party from the new Black Panther Party. Now keep in mind, many of the original Panthers, particularly on the West Coast, in Oakland and that area, California, the Bay Area of California, many of them were inspired by Marxism. Even though they were pro-Black, they were not necessarily pro-African. Now, what do I mean by that? If you read the autobiography of Assata Shakur, she speaks about how, many, if you notice on the East Coast, many Panthers in New York City and Philadelphia and New Jersey, many of them have African Swahili Islamic names, Assata Shakur, Matula Shakur, Jamil Zaid Shakur. Many of them have African names, Afeni Shakur, African or Swahili names, because on the East Coast, many of the Panthers were involved in what was referred to as cultural nationalism. They fell in line with many respects with Dr. Maulana Karenga, who in Los Angeles, Dr. Maulana Karenga, who's the founder of Kwanzaa, he had established the US organization. US means just that, us, meaning us as Black people. He and members of his organization, or the Kawaida movement, identified as, they described themselves as Black cultural nationalists. There's a difference now between Black nationalism and Black cultural nationalism. Black nationalism says that Black people should be in control of our own communities, businesses, politics, hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. Many of us have heard this. Whereas Black cultural nationalists say, well, yes, we should be in control of all that, but we need to return back to Africa in some way or another, beginning mentally, okay, culturally. And so you'll find Maulana Karenga in a lot of the at that time, a lot of the Black cultural nationalists, these were our brothers and sisters that would wear African garb. They would take on African names. They would follow African traditions. You know, we just finished celebrating Kwanzaa on January 1st. Kwanzaa comes out of that. Kwanzaa comes out of the Black cultural nationalist tradition. Well, many of the original Panther members, they didn't identify with that. They were pro-Black, many of them, but they weren't necessarily pro-African. They were not necessarily pro-African culture. Many of them were inspired, like I said, primarily, you know, by white leftists, communists, Leninists, Marxism. And you'll find that in a lot of the literature of the original Panther Party. Remember, they were famous for selling Mao Zedong's Little Red Book. Anytime you hear the original Panther Party, you'll hear people talk about the Little Red Book, which actually was the ideas of Mao Zedong. Okay, you know, Mao Zedong out of China, he was a communist. He helped lead the Chinese Revolution, kicking white people out of China. So a lot of the Panthers, like I said, you know, a lot of the Panthers, they have subscribed to that, but they were not knowledgeable on African culture. And at a certain point, several times, there were clashes between the Panther Party and the US organization over political philosophy, cultural philosophy. Okay, and so many people oftentimes will criticize the Panther Party for having politics without culture. And many people will criticize the US organization or the Black cultural nationalists for having culture with no politics. You understand where I'm coming from, okay? And so you can actually see this reflected in the original 10-point platform. You find a lot of grassroots ideas, but you also, you know, you'll find some of the Marxist and the Leninist ideas, you know, being anti-capitalist, if you would, okay? So here's what happened. Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad joins the new Black Panther Party in 1997. He had already been friends with Aaron Michaels in them since 1994, because when there was an assassination attempt in 1994 in Riverside, California, on Brother Khalid, Aaron Michaels and members of his organization, who at that time, I believe there was only 2 chapters in Texas. The new Black Panther Party was founded in 1989 in Dallas, but I believe that at that time, there were only 2 chapters, Dallas and Houston, okay? Aaron Michaels, Brother Captain David Foreman, who was the Minister of Defense, okay? Remember, Khalid is from Texas. He's from Houston, so he had a lot of ties in Texas. Aaron Michaels and members of the new Black Panther Party came to Brother Khalid's hospital bed after he'd been shot to provide security for him, because at a certain point, I believe at that point, security, actually, no, I'm not going to say that. No, I'm not going to say the security was, that Nation of Islam security was pulled off him at that point. Attorney Shabazz would probably know better than me, but for some reason, the FOI, I don't think they were at his hospital room like that. So they came to his aid. Khalid joins in 1997, the new Black Panther Party. In 1998, he is elected national chairman of the new Black Panther Party for self-defense. And under his leadership, it will go from 1 or 2 chapters to several chapters. It will become a national organization. You know, Brother Khalid had brought in that same energy that he had brought in the Nation of Islam under Minister Farrakhan, to help Minister Farrakhan rebuild the Nation of Islam, helping the Nation of Islam under Minister Farrakhan's leadership to once again become a national, then international organization. Khalid brought in that same energy. Brother Khalid, before joining the Nation of Islam, I think in 1967 or 1968, I believe it was 1968, after hearing Minister Farrakhan was a keynote speaker at a program at Dillard University, Brother Khalid's alma mater, and at that time, Minister Farrakhan was the national representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So he was speaking at college campuses across the country. Brother Khalid, that was his first time meeting Minister Farrakhan. But before that, Brother Khalid had already, he never joined the original Panther Party, but he had worked with the party. He had worked with the original Panthers, but also Brother Khalid, like I said, was a part of the whole Black cultural nationalist movement. Now, keep in mind, although Brother Khalid was diehard Nation of Islam, he believed that that Allah came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, believed that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is his messenger, believed the white man is the devil, Yaqub, all that. But he still, prior to that, he had strong Black cultural nationalist roots. And even when he came into the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he never let that go. Khalid always remained African-centered, if you would. He still remained African-centered, okay? So I'm saying all throughout his career as a Supreme Captain, National Assistant, National Spokesman of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he was the Minister of Mosque number 7, the Minister of Mosque number 20, Mosque number 7 is in Harlem, Mosque 27 in Los Angeles, the Minister of Mosque number 15 in Atlanta. Wherever you sent Brother Khalid, whatever his post was, he still kept that African centeredness about him, perhaps more so than any of the ministers under the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. That was Brother Khalid's background. And Minister Farrakhan said that when he first met Khalid, Khalid had on a dashiki and an African medallion with a big afro when he first met him, when he picked him up from the airport to bring Minister Farrakhan to his campus to speak. Okay, so once again, Khalid never let that go. He never let go of his nationalist, his Black cultural nationalist roots. And that's why when you look at lectures of Brother Khalid, while he was Minister Khalid under Minister Farrakhan, he would sometimes say, we bear witness, to Allah. We bear witness to Osiris, we bear witness to Obatala. He was saying this as a nation minister, and he perhaps was the only minister that could actually get away with that under Minister Farrakhan's leadership, to mention the names of so-called African deities. And when I say so-called African deities, of course, from an Islamic perspective, most Muslims would say, well, that's shirk, okay? But when I say so-called deities, remember, as Professor James Small said, the term deities and gods, that's actually a European concept. It's like a white Arab concept. We didn't call them deities or gods. They were just expressions of the one God. Okay. So anyway, Brother Khalid brought that into the new Black Panther Party. And you can see it reflected within the new Black Panther Party's 10-point platform. And so tonight, I'm focusing on the 10-point platform of the new Black Panther Party. And of course, I just made the connection between this 10-point platform and the 10-point platform of the original party, giving respect to the elders of the original Panther Party who were still around. But we still say, Ibae, let it be said, Ashe, it is agreed. We pour water to the earth in their honor because it is within African tradition or Black tradition to always give homage to our African ancestors. And in the new Black Panther Party, regardless of which formation, most of the chapters would always start with giving libation. The chapters are supposed to have a minister of culture. And on the National Central Committee, you had a minister of culture, whereas in the original Panther Party, to my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't have a minister of culture because they really didn't place an emphasis on, as I said, on African culture like that in the original Panther Party, with the exception of the East Coast, as I said. The East Coast, for those of you who are just now tuning in, a lot of the East Coast Panthers, like I said, Asada Zakor writes about this in her autobiography. You'll find that many of the East Coast Panthers had African and Swahili names: Asada Shakur, Afeni Shakur, Mutulu Shakur, Zaid Shakur. They had African, Swahili, Islamic names, whereas something that I didn't mention earlier, Asada mentions in her biography is that, you had a lot of Panthers that could quote Marxism, Leninism, communism. They can quote, the Russian, they can tell you word for word the history of the Russian Revolution, but didn't know anything about African culture. They didn't know anything about Ghana, Yoruba culture, Akan, Ifa culture, ancient Kemet. They couldn't tell you about that, but they were pro-Black. So in the new Black Panther Party, Brother Khalid emphasized the importance of we as Black people, we as African people, of reconnecting back to our roots. That's where the Black cultural nationalism comes in. And you'll find that within the 10-point platform of the new Black Panther Party. So I'm going to go through the 10-point platform as concise as possible. Number one, we want freedom. We want the power to practice self-determination and to determine the destiny of our community and the Black nation. We just finished celebrating Kwanzaa. Self-determination in Kwanzaa, as Dr. Karenga said, the Swahili word is kujichagulia, meaning self-determination means that we define ourselves, okay? We tell our own story. As Dr. John Henry Clarke has stated many times, for the past 500 years, the history of Africa and African people has been told by white people and by other non-Blacks, other non-Africans. Okay, so when we practice the principle of self-determination, we are telling the truth about our history. Kemet was not a white civilization. Africans were not swinging from trees before the white man came and got us. Civilization began with Black people. See, that's an example of self-determination. We talk about the Moors, we talk about the Nubians, we talk about Western Africa, we talk about all the civilizations that started out of the Nile Valley and spread into the rest of the continent. Okay, that's self-determination. When we say determine the destiny of our community, the Black nation, we have to stop referring to ourselves as minorities. See, it's amazing to me that over 50 years ago, Black people weren't referring to ourselves as minorities, okay? And, Brother Malcolm has stated at that time, we are not minorities. We belong to a world community as Black people, okay, outside of America. And when Malcolm was the national representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you see old videos of Malcolm when he was still with Mr. Muhammad. Malcolm was standing in front of Elder Michaud's bookstore. And you notice it's a picture of a bunch of non-white men. And it says, I think it says, we outnumber white people 11-1, okay? Malcolm, was explaining, and that's actually Nation of Islam teaching and Garveyite teaching as well, who the original Panther Party was also inspired by Garveyism. That's why in many cases, they had the red, black, and green flag. But Elijah Muhammad and Marcus Garvey emphasized that Black people belong to a world community and we're not minorities, okay? The rest of point number one says, now here's the cultural nationalism that I'm talking about now. Once again, we already just finished mentioning self-determination, but this is the further emphasize what Brother Khalid was trying to do. We believe in the spiritual high moral code of our ancestors. We believe in the truths of the Bible, Quran, and other sacred texts and writings. We believe in Ma'at, balance, and the Aguza Saba. We believe that Black people will not be free until we are able to determine our divine destiny. See, that's self-determination again. Now, what did Brother Khalid when he said we believe in the high spiritual moral code of our ancestors? Okay, well, family, I'm a member of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization. Brother Khalid was a member of this organization. Most people don't know that. Even people that claim to be students of Khalid, they don't even know what ASCAC is. This was an organization that was co-founded by the immortal Dr. John Henry Clarke, okay? And we study African civilization before the coming of Europeans and Asians, all right? And Dr. Maulana Karenga, once again, Khalid, being friends with Dr. Karenga or being an associate with him, he brings that cultural nationalist teaching in the organization. And so when you are studying Black cultural nationalism or Afrocentricity, a term that was coined by Dr. Molefi Asante, right? You do realize that there were books before the Bible, before the Quran, before the Torah, okay, that existed in Africa, excuse me for coughing. The Huzia, which was translated by Dr. Maulana Karenga, a book of high moral code, the book of coming forth by day, the so-called book of the dead, Ptah-hotep. All right, these are books that were in existence thousands of years before a Bible, Quran, or a Holy Torah. The Ptah-hotep has been referred to as the oldest book in the world. Okay, the principles we believe in Ma'at. Ma'at is the African goddess of balance, reciprocity. Okay, she's always depicted as a woman with wings. And it has been, it can be argued that whenever you see justice in the Western world being depicted as a blind woman, it can be argued that was taken from Ma'at, because Ma'at represents justice. The Aguza Saba, these are the principles that we just finished celebrating during Kwanzaa. See, Brother Khalid believed in celebrating Kwanzaa, anything that will connect us back to Africa. But also, oftentimes we talk about Dr. Karenga founding Kwanzaa, but most people don't know that Brother Khalid had established the Black Holiday in I think he founded it in 1997, might have been 1998. No, it might have been before that. Attorney Shabazz might know, it might have been 95, 96. He founded a holiday to replace Thanksgiving called Jiname. Jiname comes out of the Ghanaian language, the Akan language, okay, which is also, it's a language that's a part of a religion, just like with Yoruba, okay? Once again, we had religions and holy books before the coming of the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the Bible, Torah, in the Quran. Brother Khalid establishes a holiday very similar to Kwanzaa called Jiname, and that means in the Akan language, except God or but God. No one is above you but God. It was actually to replace Thanksgiving, and it's supposed to be celebrated literally the Thursday that Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving is celebrated here in America. He created a holiday, and I don't even think that there are even 10 people in America that know how to perform the ceremony. I know 3 of them, Brother Baba Zaid Muhammad out of New Jersey, Brother Divine Allah out of New Jersey, and Brother Yusuf Shabazz out of Georgia. All of them had the honor of serving. I served with all 3 of them, but all 3 of them had the honor of serving under Khalid Abdul Muhammad in the new Black Panther Party and being trained by him. Okay, so Brother Khalid set up a holiday. So once again, he was emphasizing Black people returning back to the traditions of our ancestors, because, you know, we have a lot of Black folk that claim to be pro-Black, but they can't tell you the first thing about African culture. Okay, you know, which is really something. And just to let you know, when Khalid had came into the Panther Party, I said earlier, for those of you who are just now tuning in, I mentioned how, you know, Brother Khalid, I said that the new Black Panther Party, like the original Panther Party, is an amalgamation, meaning that various philosophies mixed. Amalgamation means a bunch of things mixed into one. With the original Panther Party, you know, you had Nation of Islam, Garveyism, communism, Marxism, other revolutionary groups. But in the new Black Panther Party, very similar, Nation of Islam, Garveyism. What Brother Khalid did when he came into the new Black Panther Party was he merged the principles of, he took the best out of the various philosophies. He took from Black cultural nationalism, you know, the Kawaida movement, okay? He took from Black nationalism. He took from the Nation of Islam. He took from Garveyism, okay? He merged the principles of Black nationalism and Black cultural nationalism and Black revolutionary nationalism and Afrocentricity, merged that into the new Black Panther Party. And in my judgment, and I said this while I served in the new Black Panther Party, no other organization on a national level, Black organization on a national level, has been able to do that. And so you'll find that within the new Black Panther Party, and I definitely noticed this under the leadership of Attorney Malik Shabazz and under Brother Khalid, you will find people that were that came out of the Nation of Islam, Nation of Gods and Earths, African Hebrew Israelites, Nubians, who joined the party, practitioners of Yoruba, Akan, Kemetic practitioners, if you would, people who practice what is referred to as the other traditional African religions. You will find all that within the new Black Panther Party. And that's actually what Brother Khalid wanted, okay? And no other Black organization that I observed that actually did that, okay? But these were people that came out of various Black traditions, and they were pro-Black, and they actually used that to enhance their mission, to enhance the new Black Panther Party, but as well as to enhance their own lives as Black activists. Okay. So number 2, we want full employment for our people, and we demand the dignity to do for ourselves what we have begged the white man to do for us. See, that's Nation of Islam and Garveyite teaching. Elijah Muhammad referred to that as do for self. Marcus Garvey and Elijah Muhammad, once again, just to let you know, Elijah Muhammad, when you hear me big up Garvey and Elijah Muhammad, I'm not saying that they were the only ones, the only Black leaders to teach Black people to do for self. I am saying that on a national level, they were the most successful. Garvey being the largest of the two, you know, he had the largest Black organization and the largest Black economics of any Black organization in the history of the world, and after him would be Elijah Muhammad. The reason why Elijah Muhammad uh, economic empire was not as, I would say, was not as vast, is because it was a religious movement. You had to become Muslim to join the Nation of Islam, whereas Marcus Garvey, his movement was non-religious. But either way, they were still the most successful in galvanizing Black people on a national level to put our money together to create jobs for our people. Okay, you had supermarkets, you had you had dry cleaners. Under Elijah Muhammad, they had banks. I think they had at least 2 banks: Freedom Bank or Independence Bank, supermarkets, farms, et cetera, et cetera. Garvey, building clothes for our people. Garvey had said something to the effect, send me your nickels, pennies, and dimes, send me all that. Garvey had Garvey had printed his own money. Now, you're a bad man if you're able to print your own money. He had a ship line. Of course, people would try to discredit it and say that they weren't seaworthy. Okay, if that be the case, we respect Garvey for his effort. We respect the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and all those that attempted to help us for their effort. Ibai Ashe. Okay, but this here, we want full employment for our people, and we demand the dignity to do for ourselves what we have begged the white man to do for us. That right there is that do for self-teaching that Black people have actually practiced since emancipation, okay, since the days of the Freedmen Bureau, before that. Unfortunately, whenever you mention the concept of independence to most Black people, most so-called African Americans, I'm noticing that a lot of them will look at you like you're crazy, like this is something new. We actually had this, and there are many people that still remember this in their lifetime until integration came. We actually had a do for self mentality collectively. We had no choice. The rest of number 2, we believe that since the white man has kept us deaf, dumb, and blind, and used every dirty trick in the book to stand in the way of our freedom and independence, that we should be gainfully employed until such time we can employ and provide for ourselves. We believe further in power in the hands of the people, wealth in the hands of the people, arms in the hands of the people. See, that's that original party line. See, we share that as well. Number 2, we definitely share that with the original Panther Party. Okay, that right there, that's that power in the head. That's that grassroots teaching, if you would. That socialist teaching, that communist teaching, if you would. But remember now, Karl Marx, the founder of communism, had studied. Most people don't know this. He studied African communalism, and as Dr. John Henry Clark said, communism, that's a baby. That was nothing new. Karl Marx studied African communalism, where everyone in society contributes to the pot, and everyone is able to benefit from the pot. Okay, but this right here, in terms of, right now, there's a big controversy with a lot of the, I don't like using the term, the so-called illegal immigrants, many of whom are Latin. The complaint is actually among many Black people. I'm saying, many conscious Black people, like a Umar Johnson, is that, Black folk are fighting for immigrants to get over here. And we end up getting passed over for a lot of these jobs, a lot of these scholarships. You have a lot of so-called legal immigrants that are, getting free education, getting free healthcare, getting money, or even those who are not so-called illegal immigrants, getting money, many, coming from Latin countries, many of them coming from Asian countries, and some coming from African countries who are getting, they're getting resources that should be available to those of us who help build this country. Okay, so what we're saying, what's being said in point number 2, is that we should be at the front of the line. In other words, we should be in that first draft round pick when it comes to getting jobs. Since we actually primarily built this country, the wealth of America came about as a result of Black slavery. Read the book by not Amos Wilson, by Dr. Claude Anderson, White Wealth, Black Labor. He wrote that book explaining this. And many people are still unaware of this, that America's wealth came as a result of Black labor, forced Black labor. And whenever people say that Black people are lazy, we weren't lazy when we were building America. Okay, so that's what point number 2 is explaining. Okay, so yeah, point number 2 is explaining that yes, we have to create our own jobs. But in the meantime, after all the blood, sweat, and tears that we committed, that we shed as a result of building this country, we should be the first ones that are offered these jobs in America. Okay, a lot of Black people benefited during the Great Migration. The reason why so many African Americans ended up in the North during the Great Migration that began taking place in the 20s. Okay, Elijah Muhammad was a part of that Great Migration. That's how he got to Detroit. A lot of them were coming to they were leaving the South because of the jobs in the North, the factories. Okay, the factories into the 1980s had employed a lot of Black people. I'm talking about if you got a job at a factory, okay, that was a good job. Okay, benefits, and you can retire off benefits. Only one person can work in the house, and with that one job, you could feed a family, buy a house, put children through college. That's how good those jobs were. A lot of the transportation jobs, if you notice, a lot of the transportation jobs that you see to this day, the majority, when you go to these major cities such as Newark, DC, New York City, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Chicago, okay, most of the transportation jobs, you notice a lot of Black people have these jobs, a lot of older Black people have these jobs, okay? That's because, if my memory serves me correctly, the transportation jobs were among the first to integrate, to employ Black people, benefits, good jobs. Okay, I'm sorry, somebody sent me a text. I was making sure that it wasn't the chairman, telling me to slow down. Okay, but anyway, so we demand full employment. But anyway, what I was saying is that a lot of these jobs, a lot of these transportation jobs and these factory jobs, they were employing Black people. They were amongst the first, definitely the factory jobs were amongst the first to integrate before integration became a law. But I believe that also applies to the transportation companies as well. Okay, but like I said, but at the same time, point number 2 is also saying that, while we're applying to work, okay, because, use that money or employ yourself. There's something that in the Nation of Islam, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught. He said, either get a job or create a job for yourself, okay? And so he said, if you're going to work for the white man, fine, work for the white man, you're going to get an honest day's work. But at the same time, create a job for yourself so you won't have to beg anymore, right? Point number 3. In fact, hold 1 second. I'm just making sure I didn't leave anything out discussing point number 2, okay? We want tax exemption. This is point number 3. And an end to robbery of the Black nation by the capitalists. We want an end to capitalist domination of Africa in all of its forms: imperialism, primitive settler colonialism, neocolonialism, racism, sexism, Zionism, apartheid, and artificial borders. Family, I recommend that you read 2 books. One, a book that came out in the 1940s by the immortal Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. Now, family, before you start snapping on me about Dr. Du Bois, he sold out Marcus Garvey, okay? Dr. John Henry Clark had referred to W.E.B. Du Bois as the best intellectual that Black America ever produced. Yes, he referred to him as arrogant. He was from the Black bourgeoisie. And so a lot of Black bourgeoisie, Black folks feel that they're better than Black folks who, may not be as educated, okay? Yes, he's the type of person you would never take him out with you, to the bar or to a restaurant just to sit down. But we as Black people have to stop using every little flaw that our leaders have as a result of discrediting them. He had flaws just as Garvey had flaws. Okay, which one of our leaders didn't have flaws? We have to stop, if you would, deifying, many of these women and men. They're going to make mistakes. Keep in mind that it was W.E.B. Du Bois. He was having the Pan-Africanist conferences in the early 1900s before Garvey came on the scene. Just like, some of you that say that Booker T. Washington was an Uncle Tom, Booker T. Washington, he organized the first Pan-Africanist conference called the Conference of the Negro in the 19th century. A lot of people don't know that about Booker T. Washington, okay? But anyway, back to Du Bois. Du Bois wrote a book called The World in Africa. And it pretty much discusses point number 3 here, okay, the exploitation of Africa. Okay, read that book. It's still in print. It's actually my favorite book by Du Bois, The World in Africa. The other book that I recommend you read is a book that came out in the 1980s by Walter Rodney called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. It talks about all this in point number 3, okay? I'm gonna finish reading to you a point number, okay? Now, just to let you know, when discussing the Black Panther Party, okay, you cannot, it's like you can't discuss the Black Panther Party without discussing Huey P. Newton, okay? You cannot discuss the Panther Party without discussing two Kwames, Kwame Ture and Kwame Nkrumah. Now, Kwame Ture, of course, he was originally Stokely Carmichael. He was over the All African Revolutionary People's Party, and that organization preceded the Black Panther Party. And he was so dynamic and so well read and so well studied that at one, the Panther Party had asked him to come in, and he served as the quote prime minister of the Black Panther Party for a while. Okay, Bob Brown, who is Kwame's closest friend, actually goes into that history. He told me how that came about. Okay, and then of course you have Kwame Nkrumah. Now, Stokely had got his name from two African leaders, well-known African leaders, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana and Sekou Touré. Okay, Sekou Touré. So that's where he got his name from, Kwame Touré. Kwame Nkrumah was one of the first people to use the term Afrocentricity to determine African-centered thought. Okay, he studied in the United States, right, and he was the first president of independent Ghana, which the Europeans have referred to as the Gold Coast. They were exploiting that part of Africa for its gold. Okay, they called it the Gold Coast, and they got independence. Many of those African nations that got independence in the early 60s. And Kwame Nkrumah was very instrumental of that. He identified as a Pan-Africanist. And Kwame Nkrumah, like many African leaders, was inspired by what was taking place here in the United States of America. He graduated from Lincoln University, but also he was there 10 years after the first president of independent Nigeria, Brother Azikiwe. Two of them were members of my fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma. Kwame Nkrumah spent a lot of time in Harlem. He actually lived in Harlem, but many of the African leaders spent time in Harlem, such as Robert Mugabe. He spent time in Harlem, and they were inspired by a lot of the Black liberation movements at that time, many of them that came out of Harlem. So, okay, so you always have to, give homage to them. So Kwame Nkrumah, being a Pan-Africanist, he believed, of course, in the unity of people of African descent. But like Dr. John Henry Clark had stated, he said that anything that people of African descent do, you always have to have Africa as its focus. Africa should be our focus. And so Kwame Nkrumah, Kwame Touré, coming out of that Pan-Africanist tradition, they emphasize point number 3 here. Now, when you're reading this here, okay, and this is very long, of course, to, like I said, I will be as concise as possible. Point number 3 goes on to say, okay, now I want you to study this very carefully. It says, we believe that this wicked racist government has robbed us, and now we are demanding the overdue debt of reparations, okay? The reparations movement, which has been in existence since emancipation, the 40 acres and a mule. There were various reparation movements during emancipation. And of course, that is still a major issue. In this last presidential election, that was the first time in a long time that reparations was actually a part of a presidential campaign. Now, 3 years ago, was it 3 years ago? Yeah, 3 years ago, 2019, okay, we had covered the reparations hearings that was on Capitol Hill. Dr. Junior Malvo had spoke, Ta-Nehisi Coates had spoke. There were various people that were pro and con regarding reparations, okay? So to finish reading this here, it says a form of reparations was promised 100 years ago. See, we just mentioned the 40 acres and a mule as restitution for the continued genocide of our people into a meaningful measure and repair the damage of the African Holocaust. Magamiza Ma'afa, that means a terrible event occurred. And so Amiri Baraka used to always discuss that. He used to always discuss the Ma'afa, Magaiza Ma'afa, African Holocaust known as slavery. I recommend you read the book, The Black Holocaust 101 for Beginners. That brother is out of DC, but his book is still in print. It talks about the tragedy of slavery, the traumatic effects of slavery. It's a beginning point. Of course, Roots touched on it. If you're going to, Roots touched on it, of course, but there have been various documentaries, well, I should say movies on slavery, Sankofa, but there's one that was banned for a while that they actually reintroduced in 2003. You can find it online. It's called Goodbye, Uncle Tom. Some versions it's called Farewell, Uncle Tom. And it actually is, it gives a horrific description of what went on during the Mangaliza Ma'afa African Holocaust known as slavery. Let's continue. We're still at point number 3. Okay, and because of all this, because of the tragedies of neocolonialism, tragedies of criminal settler colonialists, with European nations and now China taking over African nations, okay, in the name of creating infrastructure, exploiting the resources. And of course, the biggest resource of Africa is us. People who support reparations, this is the rationale for people that support reparations, is that, okay, because of the damage that has been done to people of African descent, okay, we deserve compensation for that. You know, I just finished saying that the wealth of America was built primarily as a result of forced slave labor, Black slave labor. Okay. We believe our people should be exempt from all taxation as long as we are deprived of equal justice under the laws of the land. And the overdue reparations debt remains unpaid. Okay, see, we just spoke about that. You know, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, on the back of the Muhammad Speaks paper in the Final Call newspaper, he spoke about that tax exemption. I believe he does. Okay, I don't want to misquote. You know, speaks about that. Like, in other words, all the damage that we suffered, why should we pay taxes to a government that keeps oppressing us? Okay, and of course, just to let you know, I've actually had the honor of attending the Indaba conferences that used to be held in the early and mid 2000s. The Indaba conference held in different parts of the country. Various reparations groups, including in Cobra, organized these conferences, and they would always have Minister Farrakhan keynote it. Okay, he's keynoted it, many times over the years. The Indaba conference, look it up, NDABA conference. I've had the honor of attending it along with Attorney Malik Lulu Shabazz. Actually, Attorney Shabazz has spoken at these conferences in years past. Okay, and of course, I've attended in the capacity of an activist and as a journalist. All right, so, and that debt, and I once heard Minister Farrakhan say that the damage has been done, so much damage has been done, is that you can never actually cover the full debt. Now, keep in mind, for people that are anti-reparation, here in America, Native Americans are being compensated, Asian Americans are being compensated, for being swept up during World War II. If you were Japanese or if you were another Asian, the government put you in camps. And then, of course, members of the Jewish community who were the victims of the Holocaust, or their relatives victims of the Holocaust, they received compensation and are still receiving compensation. Okay, so that's been an argument of Black reparationists, that since everyone else is getting paid, why can't we get paid? A book that I recommend you read is Dr. Conrad Worrell. He edited this book called The Case for Reparations. He wrote that book some time ago. He passed on last year, Ibaye Ashe, Dr. Conrad Worrell, the National Black United Front. I've had the honor of being in his presence many times, but he wrote a book or edited a book called The Case for Reparations. Okay, we're going to finish on point number 3. We will accept payment in fertile and mine-rich land, precious metals, industry, commerce, and currency. As Brother Malcolm had said, land is the basis of all independence. Unfortunately, most of these Black organizations are not talking about owning land. They're not, many of our organizations are indeed pushing assimilationism. And any talk of Black nationalism is always obscured. It is in many cases ignored or deleted. Okay, as a journalist, I've had the honor of traveling across the country and covering these conferences that are put on by educated Black professionals. And when you mention the concept of independence, separating, there's always huge pushback. I went through that a few weeks ago. Okay, I was on a conference call on Clubhouse and discussing that. And it was a room that was partially dedicated to Malcolm X. And when I mentioned the idea of what Garvey and Elijah Muhammad said about separating, or other organizations such as the Provisional Government for the Republic of North Africa, there was a bunch of pushback. And then it ended up becoming a shouting match. Unfortunately, Black folk are so tied to whiteness. Anything that separates us from whiteness psychologically, it causes us pain. And this is why Dr. Joy DeGroy discusses in her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Okay, she wrote that book discussing this, how we're wounded from that. Okay, let's go on. As genocide crimes continue, people's tribunals must be set up to prosecute and to execute. Our Black people ready to have that discussion. Now, remember, the Jewish community did that, and they just sent somebody. There was a Nazi just last year, I believe, a former Nazi. He was in his hundreds or getting ready to turn 100. They got him, found him, and found him guilty. I'm not sure whatever happened to him. Okay, but for years, for decades, members of the white Jewish community went after former Nazis, okay, that were in those concentration camps before and during World War II. Okay, that decade that the Holocaust took place in Europe, those people that were involved, if you're alive, they don't care if you have 1 foot in the grave, they're coming after you to hold you accountable. Now, are Black people ready to take it that far with those who have done us harm, who keep doing us harm? Okay, the Jews, in quotes, meaning European Jews, were given reparation. I just said that. The Japanese were given reparation. I just said that. The Black, the red, and the brown nations must be given reparation. The American white man owes us reparations. English owes us reparations. France owes us reparations. Spain and all of Europe. Africa owes us reparations and repatriation. The Arabs owe us reparations. The white Jews owe us reparations. All have taken part in the African Holocaust. Uh-oh. We're great to have that discussion. In the book, The Case for Reparations, by Conrad Warrill, it goes into that. Okay, who's to pay, who's owed to what's which of the nations of Africa helped sell us over here. And of course, that's actually been a major, just to let you know, right now within America, you have, of course, the ADOS movement, American Descendants of Slaves, and the FBA movement, the Foundation of Black America. Okay, they're demanding reparations only for us here. Okay, whereas from the Pan-Africanist perspective, like Conrad Warrill or the NCOBRA organization, they're saying that Black people worldwide are owed reparations. Okay, but the FBA and the ADOS movements are saying, no, we should be focused only on ourselves here. And there's actually been a clash between Pan-Africanists and the ADOS and FBA movements for maybe 4 or 5 years now. There's like a clash. There's like a clash now. But of course, the Black Panther Party is strictly, hold one second. Hold on, family, 1 second. Like I said, the new Black Panther Party is strictly, Pan-Africanists, okay? But we respect our sisters and brothers, those of us that who are Pan-Africanists, I know I do, collectively, we respect our sisters and brothers who identify as ADOS or FBA. All philosophy, see, when you're a Pan-Africanist and a Black nationalist, we welcome various philosophies. We welcome disagreement, okay? What we don't welcome is the canceling each other out, name call, put downs, and innuendos, outright mudslinging, simply because we disagree with each other. We have to agree to disagree. Okay, brother, hold 1 second. Something that jumped off. Okay, here we go. All have taken part. We're still on number that skipped a little bit. Number 3, all have taken part in the African Holocaust, in the slaughter of 600 million of our people over the past 6,000 years in general and 400 years in particular. We know that this is a reasonable and just demand that we make at this time in history. Of course, here's that Nation of Islam teaching. I told you, Brother Khalid added all that. Those who follow the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, okay, whether you consider yourself Nation of Islam or Nation of Gods and Earths, they're taught that the white man, when he was made from us, Black people, that the scientists, the 24 scientists, these are the Black men that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said they rule the world from behind the scenes. You would consider them, these are highly advanced men. These are our brothers. These are, Elijah Muhammad said, these are the angels that you read about in the Holy Quran and in the Holy Bible, Holy Torah. He said that when the white man was made from us, they had predicted that his time was only to last for 6,000 years. And since the white man has been alive, he has killed 100 million of the original people. So that's where that number comes from. So that's Nation of Islam teaching. As I said, just like the original Panther Party, for those of you who are just now tuning in, just like the original Panther Party, the new Black Panther Party is an amalgamation, meaning it is a mixture of various beliefs into one. Okay, that's what Brother Khalid did. He brought in Nation of Islam teaching. He brought in the Qaeda movement, Afrocentricity, Black cultural nationalism, Black nationalism, Black revolutionary nationalism, Hebrew Israelite, African Hebrew Israelite, Nubians. And here's the thing about Brother Khalid, okay, and Attorney Malik Zulus-Jabbar speaks about this. And by the way, if you haven't already, get the book of Khalid. This is the first biography ever written on the life of Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, written by Attorney Malik Zulus-Jabbar. I'm one of the editors of the book. This is the first comprehensive book on the, like I said, biography on Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. And you can see Brother Khalid evolving. And of course, towards the end of his physical life, you can see Brother Khalid saying that he had borrowed, I believe it was at the meeting of the masters in the year 2000 in Atlanta. He said that as he evolves, yes, he's Nation of Islam, but he said that as he evolves, he found himself taking from various philosophies, the Black affirming philosophies, as a part of his evolution. Okay, so and I heard Attorney Malik Zulus-Jabbar say that him and Khalid, what they would do, they would study the philosophies of the various Black organizations. Okay, not just Nation of Islam, but Nubians, Qaeda, Afrocentricity, Hebrew Israelites, African Hebrew Israelites, the Kemetic community, et cetera, because as you know, we as people of African descent, we are very diverse, if you would. Okay, and here's the thing. Whenever you have to be very careful which spiritual belief system or religious belief system that you attack or criticize, because from a historian, from the perspective of a historian, or from the perspective of an anthropologist, every group of people, every so-called race of people has their own myths. They have their own legends. African Americans and African people are no different. Okay, it's amazing to me whenever people would criticize, for example, we just finished mentioning the Nation of Islam teaching of the white man being made. Okay, when people would ask me or would mock, they would mock their belief, I would say, well, wait a minute, if you're a Christian, you believe in Moses splitting the Red Sea, or if you're a Jew or Hebrew, you believe in Moses splitting the Red Sea, you believe in angels you can't see, you believe in, if you're a Christian, you believe in a virgin giving birth without the aid of a man, you believe in a man, two men dying and then being resurrected, Lazarus and Jesus, but then you may mock the Nation of Islam or the Nubians or the African traditions. You have to be very careful, because every group of people historically have always made up myths and legends. Just like Europeans are no different. You have Greek philosophy, you have not Greek philosophy, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Norse mythology, Celtic mythology, but no one ever attacks them. No one ever will accuse them of criticizing them or mocking that teaching, or even calling them devil worshippers. If you notice that African people are the only ones whose belief systems are always mocked and ridiculed. Okay, so you have to be very careful in terms of a belief system. Okay. Point number 4. It says, we want decent housing fit for shelter of human beings, free healthcare, preventative and maintenance. We want to end to the trafficking of drugs and to the biological and chemical warfare targeted at our people. Now, see, that's the original Panther Party's platform. Keep in mind, the original Panther Party had placed the emphasis on housing rights. And so what they were doing at that time, when they were founded across the country, east to west and everywhere in between, you had many original Panthers that were forming tenant associations. Okay, the tenant associations are very powerful. People, if you live in a building, if you live in a housing complex, and what they were doing, remember, when Martin Luther King had traveled to Chicago, he rented an apartment, and what Dr. King said, that was in 1967, he rented an apartment. He said that the racism up north was worse than the racism down south. He said, because what Black people were dealing with is institutional racism. In other words, they were being offered poor housing conditions, being charged crazy rent for poor housing conditions. And so Dr. King, he wanted to try to get a whiff of that. And so he rented an apartment in 1967. He stayed, that's when he met with Elijah Muhammad. That famous picture you might see, most people don't know that, but that's, And that was actually one of the things that actually caused Dr. King to begin to reassess his own beliefs systems. Okay, so anyway, the original Panther Party, they placed they noticed, as did many Black activists at the time, including Dr. King, that many white landlords were exploiting Black tenants, poor Black tenants. And so, of course, now we're going to get to that, but the second part of that, in that first paragraph, we want to enter the trafficking of drugs into biological and chemical warfare targeted at our people. Now, it's amazing to me, going back 4 years ago, might have been 5 years ago, I wrote an article criticizing Damon Young. He's another journalist, very smart brothers, okay? He's the one of the people that started that whole thing about the Hoteps, mocking Afrocentric Black men, okay? And one of the things that he said, and you find articles about Hoteps, they took a word that came out of our tradition, out of the Kemetic tradition, which means peace, and attempted to turn it into an insult. And he said that Hoteps, as he refers to us, that we believe in wild conspiracy theories. And so in my article, I said, well, brother, what wild conspiracy theory are you talking about? I said, you talking about the Tuskegee experiment? Are you talking about COINTELPRO? Are you talking about the crack cocaine epidemic of the 80s? I said, well, brother, these are not conspiracy theories. These are conspiracy facts, okay? I was supposed to interview Rick Ross, the real Rick Ross, in 2015 or 2016, but unfortunately, he had stood me up. I was supposed to interview him on air, because those of you know, Rick Ross was the one that had exposed, in Maxine Borders in the 90s, they exposed the CIA involvement in the crack cocaine epidemic that had plagued Black communities in the 80s into the 90s, okay? Rick Ross, and remember that reporter, the journalist Gary Webb, he was found dead. They ruled it a suicide. They said that he shot himself in the back of the head with a shotgun. That's another story. So, poor housing and drug-infested neighborhoods, crack was definitely dumped into Black neighborhoods. Of course, the original Panther Party at that time, they had already been, before the crack cocaine epidemic, we had heroin that had actually ravaged a lot of Black communities, of course. And as we've seen in the past decade, heroin has made a comeback, if you would, okay? Heroin has made a comeback for whatever reason. So the original Panther Party, as the new Black Panther Party, connected the two. They connected, germ warfare with poor housing conditions. Of course, many people have mentioned HIV and AIDS. Dr. Jack Felder, who had died several years ago, he wrote a book in 1992 investigating the origin of AIDS. And of course, he alleges in the book that it was created primarily to get rid of Black people. Dr. Ali Muhammad, who used to be the National Minister of Health for the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he's the brother that has the treatment for HIV, Kimron. He's lectured on that. And he's actually showed, he's provided documentation, strong documentation that would suggest that AIDS was created. And of course, you see videos all on YouTube discussing that. And I'm not necessarily saying that YouTube is a good source, but YouTube is a good enough source for you to be able to write down certain things and look up articles and go to the library, okay? Brothers and sisters, please do not depend on YouTube for all of your information. If you're coming in that Panther tradition, in fact, I was just reading something that Che Guevara said this earlier, a few hours ago. He said, every revolutionary, you can't be a revolutionary unless you're an educated revolutionary, and I'm paraphrasing, okay? You have to read. You just can't watch YouTube. You have to read. You have to study. If you're calling yourself coming in the Black Panther tradition, before you were given a gun, when you came to a Panther meeting, you were given a book to read, okay? If you say that you're in the tradition of Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, Dr. Khalid was very well read. He was an excellent researcher. You say you love Brother Malcolm. Malcolm was very well read. Remember what Minister Farrakhan said about Brother Malcolm? He said that when he was with Malcolm at these white schools, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Brown, he would watch Malcolm, a man who only had an 8th grade education, handcuff men and women who had doctorates. And at the end of these debates, they would invite Malcolm to speak. At the end of these debates, that they would invite Malcolm, they would say to him, Mr. X or Minister Malcolm, what was your alma mater? Your college. He said, I never went. He said, my college was the streets. I never went to college. They couldn't believe it because he was so well read. As Minister Farrakhan pointed out, he read the same things that they read. Okay, he was able to out debate, as Minister Farrakhan said, men and women who read Socrates and Plato and Shakespeare because he read Plato, Socrates, and Shakespeare. Okay, let us finish with number 4. We believe since the white landlords were still on housing, that's what number 4 is dealing with. We believe since the white landlords will not give decent housing and quality health care to our people, to our Black community, the housing, the land, the social, political, and economic institutions should be made into independent Ujamaa, New African Communal Cooperatives. Okay, one of the principles of Kwanzaa, Ujamaa, so that our community with government reparation and aid until we can do for ourselves can build and make drug-free, decent housing with health facilities for our people. Here's something that the Panthers had, the original Panther Party. They used to have the free health clinics, okay? Dr. Mutulu Shakur, he was in the Panther, he's still serving time, political prisoner. He had the acupuncture school. But before that, in the 60s and 70s, the Panthers had the free health clinics. They were bringing Black doctors primarily to give our people examinations and give our people treatment, health clinics. Sometimes it would be a bus, sometimes it would be a small van, a small bus, sometimes it would be a table set up, sometimes it would be in their office. They had the free health clinic. Okay, they had the free health clinics. And once again, that's when they said that, Ujamaa, they had these the independent Ujamaa, the New African Communal Cooperatives, many of the Panthers, they would have what was called the Freedom Schools, okay, the Freedom Schools. These were free. Oftentimes they were on the weekends, and these were people either our brothers and sisters that were school teachers or they were in school to be teachers, or just, people that were knowledgeable. Panthers were bringing Black people to teach Black children, okay? See, once again, that's self-determination as well. Okay, number 5. Here we go. We're just talking about education now. Number 5, we want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this devilish and decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history, herstory, and our role in the present day society. Now, we keep seeing this whole thing with critical race theory. And the problem that I'm having with critical race theory is that a lot of our people are noticing in the media, I work in media, but I'm noticing that a lot of people in the media, including Black people, we keep acting like the erasure of critical race theory is just a conservative thing, a Republican thing. No, you have white liberals that try to whitewash history as well. That's not just a white Republican thing. See, that's why Malcolm told us, he told Black people he said this while he was in the Nation of Islam and after he came back from Mecca, to beware of white liberals. Malcolm said this. Okay, so, white liberals, he said that the conservative is a fox, the white conservative is a fox, and the white conservative is a wolf, and the white conservative is a fox. The fox is sly, the sly fox, very sneaky, whereas the wolf has blood dripping from its jaws and from its teeth. So you know what the wolf is about, but the fox is very sneaky. That's how he described the white liberal. Okay, so oftentimes, people, I'm noticing that a lot of Black conservatives will quote Malcolm saying that about the liberals. Malcolm wasn't excusing conservatives. Malcolm was going at both. He was explaining you have to watch liberals more because they're sneaky. Okay, so this whole thing about critical race theory, like I said, you don't just have white conservatives trying to erase the true history of America. You have many white liberals that do that as well. Okay, and oftentimes, I've had the honor of working with many activist organizations, not just in the capacity of a journalist, but as an activist. And I've actually asked this question publicly. I posted this on Facebook. Oftentimes I encounter many white people, just like Malcolm, Minister Farrakhan, the original Panther Party, just like, who come up to me and have told me, listen, I want to end white racism. And, I said, okay, well, fine. Are you willing to go the direction of your brother, John Brown, and that is dismantle a system that you benefit from, okay? Unfortunately, John Brown, those of us that know about John Brown, unfortunately, he is an anomaly in white America, because most white folks, even the ones that say that they want to end racism, are not willing to take it as far as he and his sons did, okay? He's an anomaly and a rarity, okay? And so, you know, there were many white people. Remember the scene, I don't like using the Malcolm X movie, but there was a scene in the movie, in the Malcolm X movie, in which it was a white woman. She came up to Malcolm and said, you know, listen, I'm not one of those white people that I'm not racist. What can I do? And you know, to help in racism, Malcolm said nothing. Now, just to let you know, it didn't take place at Harvard. That was a real scene in the autobiography. Malcolm said when he was the minister of Mosque Number 7, a white woman came in the restaurant that Mosque Number 7 had operated and had asked him that question. He said absolutely nothing, and she walked away. And Malcolm regretted not telling her. He said, you know, Malcolm said that, you know, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, I should have told her, you know, to go into your communities and teach white people about the ills of racism, okay? Now, of course, you have many people, many Black people that will say that there's really nothing white people can do to end racism, because there are many people that have lost hope for white America or for white people in general. But there are many, such as an O'Malley Yeshiteli, and who actually shared Huey P. Newton's and Kwame Ture's advice, was that, okay, like Malcolm, who shared Brother Malcolm's perspective, is that white people don't need to come to us and discuss racism. Don't go to somebody said, you know, with Joe Biden, don't come to a Black, or these white Democrats, don't come to a Black church and speak to us about racism. Go to a white church and speak to your people about racism, okay? Excuse me for 1 second. So anyway, you know, we, like I said, we oftentimes find this sneakiness amongst white liberals to try to act like they're our friends, but you know, they have a typical, you know, it's still a white supremacist mindset, okay? That tells you that you're supposed to rule Black people, okay, or lie about history, or whitewash history. So we're still on number 5. We believe in an educational system that will give our people a knowledge of self. See, that's Nation of Islam language again. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, knowledge of self. Who are you? You are the Black man is the original man. The Black woman is the original woman. God and goddesses of the universe. Knowledge of self. We, you know, we built civilization. We helped create the universe. Knowledge, that type of knowledge of self. What were we before we came in contact with Europeans? Unfortunately, my biggest issue as a writer, you know, yes, I'm a journalist, but I've actually written pieces dealing with our history, with African history. And my pet peeve with us as Black people, we can't seem to get, when discussing Black history, we can't seem to get beyond slavery or beyond our contact with Europeans, okay? And this is the reason why Arthur Schomburg, okay, our brother, who, when you go to Harlem on Malcolm X Boulevard, look, the Schomburg Center, where, you know, Arthur Schomburg taught so many of our scholars. He taught so many of our scholars. At one time, his library had the largest collection in the world of Black studies. He said, what you refer to as Black history is nothing more than the missing pages of world history. Now, just to remind you what I said a few minutes ago, as we were going into point number 5, that the original Panthers had freedom schools. They had teachers teaching Black children our true history. You know, the few Panthers that did know African history, you know, freedom schools. You saw those primarily on the East Coast. And as I said, most of the East Coast Panthers were very well read in African history, unlike most of the West Coast Panthers, you know, that were primarily educated in communism and Marxism, Leninism, leftist philosophy, although they were pro-Black. Okay, so as a writer, you know, I've written on this subject. You know, the true history of Black people is that we had a history before slavery. We had a history before the coming of Europeans. Okay, and I wrote an article quite some time ago called Africana Studies. Look it up, you know, Dashan Farad. And the article that I wrote was called Africana Studies in the 21st Century and Beyond. It was an updated version of Dr. John Henrik Clark's article, Why Africana Studies. And I mentioned in the article how most educated professional Black people cannot name 5 ancient African or Black civilizations, okay? When we as Pan-Africans use the term African, we mean Black. The term African and Black are used interchangeably or synonymously. So if I say African, I'm talking about Black or African. Okay, as a Pan-Africanist in the new Black Panther Party, that remember, if you're a Pan-Africanist, when we say Africa, we don't just mean our brothers and sisters on the continent. Those are continental Africans. We are diasporic Africans, meaning the word diaspora is associated. It came out of the Jewish community, which means the spreading out of the Jewish community as a result of oppression, slavery, domination. Okay. So when we say African, like I said, we use the term African diaspora. The term African diaspora started getting used by Black scholars in the 1950s. Okay, a former professor of mine, Dr. Carlton Wilson, from North Carolina Central University, he actually wrote an article on the subject. Look him up, Dr. Carlton Wilson, like Carlton Banks, Carlton Wilson, African diaspora, and he wrote about it. The scholars, scholars began using that term to describe African people or Black people everywhere. So when I say African, I'm talking about Black people. When I say Black people, I'm talking about Africans. And so in my article, Africana Studies in the 21st Century and Beyond, I mentioned that. How many educated Black professionals can name, I said, can name 5 ancient Black civilizations, okay? Most people don't. You still have most of our people that don't know that ancient Egypt was a Black civilization originally. Most of us don't. Okay, and you have a lot of clowns who claim to be so educated in Black culture, like a Damon Young, and they don't really know nothing. And they write all types of erroneous stuff about their own history, but they claim to be pro-Black. Okay. So point number 5, we're finishing off. We believe in an educational system that will give our people a knowledge of self. I said that once again, Elijah Muhammad's teaching. If we do not have knowledge of self and of our position in society and the world, then we have little chance to properly relate to anything else. Now, of course, Dr. John Henry Clarke has said that. Dr. Yusuf bin Yakinen has said that, otherwise known as Dr. Ben. And by the way, December 31st, we celebrated the birthday of Dr. Yusuf bin Yakinen, otherwise known as Dr. Ben. And on January 1st, we celebrated the birthday of Dr. John Henry Clarke, two immortal ancestors, Ibae Ashe. Every serious student of Black history should know who Dr. Yusuf bin Yakinen and Dr. John Henry Clarke are, okay? Among many. There's so many people who have said, who actually embody point number 5. I'm going to read it again. We want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this devilish and decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history, herstory, and our role in the present day society. We believe in an educational system that will give our people knowledge of self. If we do not have knowledge of self and of our position in society and the world, then we have little chance to properly relate to anything else. Dr. John Henry Clarke taught us that. Dr. Yusuf bin Yakinen taught us that. Dr. Marimbi Ani taught us that. Dr. Tyreen Wright taught us that. Dr. Francis Cress Wilson taught us that. My sister, Dr. Maya, is teaching us that. I'm sorry, I should have said Dr. Tyreen Wright is teaching us that. She's still with us. Dr. Marimbi Ani, did I mention it already, is teaching us that. Excuse me. Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, another scholar, taught us that. Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Malefi Asante. By the way, this past Saturday, we had a tribute. We honored Dr. James McIntosh of CEMOTAP out of Queens, New York. That organization hosted a tribute to Dr. Ben and Dr. Clarke, and Dr. Malefi Asante and Dr. Leonard Jeffries. They lit it up with presentations, and it was another brother, a younger brother, a teacher, Baba Sango, gave tributes to these brothers. Okay, it was a wonderful tribute. It was on Zoom. I had the honor of attending much of the meeting. if you would. I didn't say anything, of course, but there have been many of our scholars. Sheikh Anta Diop has said this. Sheikh Anta Diop, who wrote the book, The African Origin of Civilization, he said that Black people, he said, if Black people see greatness in ourselves, we would do great things, okay? But there have been many, many scholars, J.A. Rogers, William Leo Hansberry, Kaba Khamenei, so many, too many, Professor James Small, there's so many to name, okay? Minister Louis Farrakhan, Dr. Greg Carr, Dr. Akil Kalfani, Dr. Mario Beatty, okay? There's so many to name in this category who embody point number 5, okay? And of course, you know, many of these scholars, Dr. Naeem Akbar, many of these scholars have stated, you know, definitely the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, okay, you know, that's where the whole knowledge of self, you know, comes in, which he got from his teacher, Master Farad Muhammad, knowledge of self. They emphasize that the main reason why Black people in America are in this condition is because we've been disconnected totally from our Black selves, some knowledge of who we are, okay, in terms, you know, knowledge of who we are, who are we, the original people of the planet Earth, the Black people, the original people, okay, and so that has been emphasized time and time. And as a writer, me, like I said, I'm a journalist, but I'm also a writer. As a writer, it's still frightening the amount of Black people who cannot name 5 ancient Black civilizations. They can't name anything. They barely know anything here. Okay. Now listen, whenever we discuss a Black man inventing a stoplight or the ironing board, or a Black woman inventing the hot comb, a Black man inventing the iron, okay, that's good. Okay, but at the same time, you know, that could be considered small in comparison. Whereas other communities, you know, I remember there was a professor of mine, Professor Yusuf Ali. I think it was Professor, he's the one that helped Ivan Van Sertima write that, edit that first book on the Moors, Professor Yusuf Ali. He was a Sister Soldiers professor, Kevin Powell's professor at Rutgers, but I had him at William Patterson. I was very close with him. He had mentioned, he would oftentimes quote Sheikh Anta Diop, and he said that he quoted Sheikh Anta Diop, and I've quoted Sheikh Anta Diop before just a few minutes ago. He said that Black people would never be free until we do what with ancient Egypt, what white people did with ancient Greece. Okay, so always remember, put that into perspective. Okay, so like I said, so we're moving on now. Pardon me for 1 second. Pardon me, family, year-round allergies. Okay, we're on point number 6, and we hope that you, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you. We hope that you are, like I said, we don't plan to be long. We just have just a few more minutes as we go through the platform, and I'm hoping to get some, not insight, questions or dialogue. So here we go. Point number 6. 1 second, my screen keeps darkening. I gotta figure out how to keep the light on my cell phone. I gotta have the setting because it gets dark right away. Point number 6, it says, we want all Black men and Black women to be exempt from military service. Now, the original Panther Party definitely, the new Black Panther Party, although there are differences, they definitely share that, okay? We believe that Black people should not be forced to fight in the military service to defend the racist government that holds us captive and does not protect us. We will not fight and kill other people of color in the world who, like Black people, are being victimized by the white racist government of America. We will protect ourselves from the force and violence of the racist police and the racist military by any means necessary. That's Malcolm's language. But remember, the biggest example of this here, the most popular case of point number 6, was our brother, the immortal Muhammad Ali, the greatest champion there ever was in boxing. Remember, you know, he said, ain't no Viet Cong ever called me nigger. Remember, he said that. And remember, you know, you could see that in the movie, but that was a real life scene when he was saying, you know, he said, you my enemy, talking about the that congressional committee when he refused, when he was a conscientious objector. And he had said that. He said, you know, what did the Viet Cong ever do to me? You my enemy. And there were a lot of Black people that went to jail, not just during Vietnam, but during Korea, World War One, World War II, when they were drafting people. There were a lot of Black people that went to jail, and during Vietnam in particular. It's just that Ali, he gets the biggest attention because of his status. But there were many Black people that were dodging the draft. Some people were going to Canada, some people were staying right here and going to jail because of they felt, why should we fight in Vietnam? And keep in mind, we were discussing Dr. King earlier. One of the things that caused Dr. King to reassess himself was that, remember we were speaking about Chicago? When he went to Chicago and Los Angeles, King was speaking with the gang members, okay? And they were telling Dr. King, look, bro, you're telling us to be nonviolent here against an enemy we see and someone who's oppressing us daily, but they're telling us to go overseas to harm an enemy to harm someone who hasn't done anything to us. Okay, so that sentiment that Ali was expressing, that was nothing new. And so that was one of the things that caused Dr. King to begin to speak against the war in Vietnam. A lot of people don't realize that. And unfortunately, it would get Dr. King, he would get ousted from many of the Black elite circles that he was a part of. Okay, he caught a lot of flack, a lot of, even amongst his colleagues, his own brothers, Black ministers. When he began speaking against Vietnam, they began to walk away from him en masse. There were many Black churches that would not host Dr. King, okay? When Dr. King came to North New Jersey, the week before he was assassinated, most of the Black ministers would not meet with him. There was only one church that he was allowed to speak in. That was Abyssinian Baptist, which is still in existence. That was the last church he spoke in New Jersey, and it was a week before he was assassinated. And that was during the time that he visited Amir Baraka. He visited Amir Baraka at that time, okay? And King, even during that time when he was giving a series of sermons, I believe, that sermon he gave at Riverside Church in Harlem, Why I Oppose the War, that was when Kwame Ture was in existence, not in existence, he was in attendance. And I believe that was the sermon that he actually gave props to Muhammad Ali for defying it. But during that time period, he definitely supported Ali. In fact, they met together. You actually see them together. There's several videos of them on YouTube together, and he bigged up Ali for his position towards the war in Vietnam. Okay. Now, of course, you have many Black people who would disagree. This sentiment was actually felt during the time of World War I. Now, keep in mind now, the Civil War, since many of our people, even back then, we thought that Abraham Lincoln had liked us, and we thought that the Civil War was being fought to end slavery, which it wasn't. It eventually led to the end of slavery, if you would. Okay, but during World War I, many Black people were opposed to fighting in that war. And W.E.B. Du Bois had said, he said, well, look, we have a stake here. He said, we built America, so no, we have to defend America. But there were other Black folk, they're like, no, Du Bois, we're not getting any justice here. So, for that sentiment that Muhammad Ali and so many other people expressed regarding killing enemies abroad and not harming enemies here, who we see on a daily basis, okay, that sentiment was already in existence. And of course, Malcolm was actually one of the, Malcolm had said that, as a matter of fact, we have to give props to Malcolm. Malcolm actually was the first one not the first one, but he was I should say, in terms of his celebrity status, he was like the first public figure to begin speaking against Vietnam, but also, remember, message to the grassroots. He was jumping on Black people for being nonviolent. And he said, how are you going to be nonviolent here, as violent as you were in Korea in World War II? Okay, that Malcolm was pointing out the contradiction. You have a lot of Black people that say that they love Martin Luther King because he was nonviolent, but then you're in the United States military, okay, which, you see the contradiction? Okay, so, you still have Black people that have, that actually share this concern. Okay, so moving on to number 6. No, I'm sorry, no, we're moving on to number 7, okay? And we're gonna end momentarily. Okay, now I'm sorry, I thought the screen was loading. It says, we want an immediate end to police harassment, brutality, and murder of Black people. We want an end to Black on Black violence, snitching, cooperation, and collaboration with the oppressor. Now, it is amazing how these issues that the party was dealing with over 50 years ago, police harassment, Black people are still dealing with. Of course, this is a major issue. New York City has a new mayor, Eric Adams. He was elected on New Year's. Mayor Adams, he had actually helped found the Guardians, not the Guardian Angels, the Guardians, which is a Black police organization that was actually started to actually combat police brutality in Black communities. And, throughout the country, there have been various Black police organizations that were started to combat police brutality. But he's recently caught flack. He's recently caught flack from many of the Black activists because of him reinstituting the stop and frisk and undercover officers. And of course, stop and frisk had disproportionately affected Black and Latino men in particular. So, right now, that's a major controversy. My good friend Hawk Newsom, who was the founder of Black Lives Matter in New York, he clashed with Mayor Adams at the time. When he was Mayor-elect Adams and candidate Adams at that time over that, because many people using the excuse that since crime is getting so crazy in these cities that it's necessary for police to become stricter. Okay, but the original Panther Party, they were very adamant against that, against police brutality, because if you notice, most of these mass shootings are being committed by white men, and most of them end up being taken alive, whereas Black people get shot, as we know, we get shot and killed for doing much, much, much less. Okay, we've seen that not just with George Floyd, but this has been taking place for decades. Okay, we're going to finish reading this here. It says, we believe we can end police brutality in our community by organizing Black self-defense groups, Black people's militias, Black liberation armies that are dedicated to defending our Black community from racist, fascist police, military oppression, and brutality. The Second Amendment of white America's Constitution gives a right to bear arms. We therefore believe that all Black people should unite and form an African United Front and arm ourselves for self-defense. Now, here's the thing. We just finished talking about Dr. King and nonviolence. Oftentimes, when discussing the Black history narrative, Black history comes up, it's Black History Month is coming up, in February, okay? The only people that you usually hear are Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, okay? What most people fail to realize, I'm talking about Black people, there were other Black organizations and Black leaders besides Brother Malcolm X and besides the Panther Party that emphasized Black people arming themselves. There were many Black people who did not agree with Dr. King's nonviolent tactics. That's something that we never tell young people or younger people. I'm in that generation where, you keep giving the King narrative, nonviolent, but there were many Black organizations that did not agree with Dr. King or would not have agreed with Dr. King. Okay, you had the Deacons for Defense. See, keep in mind, the concept of Black people defending themselves is not a Black Muslim Malcolm X Nation of Islam thing. There were many Black organizations that did not or would not have supported King's nonviolent position. Okay, every time you start talking about Black people arming themselves, people get nervous. There's a book by a good friend of mine, Akinyele Umoja. He wrote the book called We Will Shoot Back, talking about the Mississippi armed struggle. Oh, thank you very much. Armed struggle. Yeah, right now we're on point number 7. Keep in mind that you had Deacons for Defense. These are Black Christians, and there was a movie about it with Forrest Whitaker. Of course, I knew about this organization before the movie, but Deacons for Defense, these are Black Christians. They were former World War II and Korean vets, and when the Klan would shoot at them, they would shoot back. Okay, there were a lot of Black people that were shooting back at the Klan. Okay, that's a new thing. One of the main reasons why the civil rights movement, in terms of Dr. King, Abernathy, and all of them, the integrationists, was so small is because most Black people were saying, you're not going to spit on me and I'm not going to hit back. Bill Cosby was one of them. Bill Cosby didn't support directly the civil rights. He said that he didn't support the civil rights movement directly like that because he said his exact words, you're not going to hit me or spit on me and I'm not going to hit you back. Okay, a lot of Black people looked at Dr. King like he was crazy. This is something that we don't talk about. Okay, and you know, and I love Dr. Michael Eric Dyson tremendously, but one of my issues with not issues, but one of my disagreements with Dr. Dyson is that he always takes shots at Brother Malcolm when Malcolm would criticize Dr. King for his nonviolent position. You know, and I wanted to say to Dr. Dyson so bad, you know, Doc, respectfully speaking, there were many Black people that criticized Dr. King nonviolent position, okay? Okay, but before that, before Deacons for Defense, before the Nation of Islam, you had a group called the African Blood Brotherhood. The African Blood Brotherhood. This was another organization that that if white racists were to try to kill Black people, they would, you know, shoot them back, kill them back. You know, there were a lot of white people that were being killed by Black people. That's something that's never told. You keep on giving this romanticized version of Black history, but it's amazing to me, these same Negroes that love to romanticize Black history, you notice white people don't have a problem telling their children about armed struggle. We always talk about the Revolutionary War. Okay, Patrick Henry, George Washington, Paul Revere, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, they got in the Revolutionary War. Bloodshed had to be not established. Bloodshed had to take place in order for the United States to be established. Okay, this is my pet peeve, you know, with black educators, okay, or with bourgeois Negroes. Whenever you're speaking to young people, whenever I've spoken at these assemblies with young people, with high school students, okay, you always have some of the older Black teachers, you know, some of the Black teachers consider older, crossing their arm, twisting their face, and, you know, looking at you like you're crazy. Okay, fine, you have a problem with little Black boys and Black girls or Black young people being taught about armed struggle, but then you're in the military. You know what I'm saying? Okay, you're in the military. Let's move on. Okay, so anyway, of course, you know, you had the Black Liberation Army, which was started, that was a subdivision out of the Black Panther Party. At a certain point, the Black Liberation Army had to distance itself from the Black Panther group, the Black Panther organization, because the Black Liberation Army was an underground organization. There's an excellent book written about it. Get the book Black Panther, the Black Panther Party Reconsidered. I forgot who wrote it, but it's still around. It's called the Black Panther Party Reconsidered, and it discusses that. But you know, I know many members of the original who were members of the Black Panther Party and the BLA, Black Liberation Army, but this was nothing new. There had already been armed militia groups defending the Black community since slavery. This is what most people don't know. Okay, we keep giving Black people this romanticized version of Black history, like yes, it was just Dr. King. No, that was new. What Dr. King introduced, that was like a fairly new concept of the pacifist, the nonviolent, you know, which he got from Gandhi. But keep in mind, as Dr. John Henrik Parker stated, okay, Gandhi always had a nonviolent alternative. Gandhi had a violent alternative if nonviolence did not work. That's something you never say. It was a tactic, not a lifestyle. Not a lifestyle. Okay. Moving on. 1 second. I'm going on to. Here we go. Point number 8. And family, thank you very much for joining us. I'm Dashan Farad, standing in tonight for the attorney at war, Dr. Malik Zulu Shabazz, who is the chairman of the New Black Panther Party of Self-Defense, as well as the founding executive director of Black Lawyers for Justice, two organizations that are based in the Washington, D.C. area. Point number 8. Tonight I'm going over the 10-point platform of the New Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, which of course comes out of the original, the platform out of the original party. So point number 8 says, we want freedom for all Black men and women held in international, military, federal, state, county, city, and prisons. We believe that all Black people, We believe that all Black people and people of color should be released from the many jails and prisons because they have not received a fair and impartial trial. Release means release to the lawful authorities of the Black nation. Now, other communities, keep in mind, the United States is the last country to ever be a moral judge on anyone. You know, a few weeks ago, Rizza Islam and Mark Lamont Hill had gotten to a debate over the death penalty. And of course, they were talking about Rizza, they were talking about Dylan Roof. And there was something that Mark Lamont Hill said, you know, I know Mark, good brother. He said something that stuck with me, even though actually, I'm gonna be honest with you, I sided with Rizza. But there was something that Mark had said during the debate, because, you know, Mark, being a leftist, Mark identifies, you know, he's a liberal, but also a leftist. Mark refers to himself as a prison abolitionist. Okay, and I'm quite sure many of my Pan-Africanists and nationalist family will agree. But Mark, you know, Rizza was arguing that, yes, Dylan Roof should be killed. But Mark had said, well, you know, what right does and I'm paraphrasing, what right does the United States have to serve as a moral judge with all the evil that is done, especially to us? Okay. So there are many people that feel that, you know, most Black folk that are being held in prison are held there unjustly. So what this is saying is that, and it's funny because I heard Minister Farrakhan say this in 1993 when I was 16 years old, when he spoke at the Jacob Javits Center in New York City. He said, you know, let us, you know, our brothers and sisters that are deviant or wayward, you know, let us teach them. He said, let us reform them. He said, you know, you can't, you know, we don't want you executing them. Let us deal with them, you know, and if they don't get themselves together, we'll deal with them. Okay. So this right here, a lot of nationalists, a lot of prison abolitionists who may not consider themselves Pan-Africanists and may not be affiliated with the New Black Panther Party, they actually agree with this right here. They actually agree with this. Okay, but other communities have ways of dealing with their own. Okay, you know, other communities have other ways. They don't go to outside help. They don't go to outside help, but other communities, you know, have ways of dealing with their own, of course. And as we know, you know, a friend of mine, you know, oftentimes we talk about the Dr. Michelle Alexandra wrote the book, The New Jim Crow, a decade ago, discussing the prison industrial complex. But there's a friend of mine, Dr. Byron Eugene Price. He wrote a book 5 years before that in 2006, might have been 2005, called Merchandising Prisoners. And that book right there, it actually goes more in depth than Dr. Alexandra's book. You know, he actually, you know, he explains how this whole idea of merchandising prisoners, it goes back to the Roman times and even back to Persia. But right now, in the 21st century, it has, you know, of course, it definitely has racial implications. But his book precedes Dr. Alexandra's by 5 years. And when you read Dr. Alexandra's book, you know, it can be argued that maybe she borrowed a lot of her points from Dr. Price's book. Okay, but this whole concept about Black people being held unjustly, this actually relates to our political prisoners. Okay, I've been following the Mumia Abu Jamal case for quite some time. Earlier, I mentioned Imam Jamal Al-Amin. In New Jersey, they're dealing with Sunday Otto Okoli. He was the one that was captured with Sister Sada Shakur and Zaid Shakur in New Jersey, falsely accused of taking part. She was falsely accused of killing a New Jersey state trooper. The trial was a kangaroo court, and remember, the People's Army had to rescue her because she would have been killed in prison. Okay, they sent the helicopter. She ended up in Cuba, and of course, Cuba has been a sanctuary for many of our Black political prisoners. So we say free them all. Mumia Abu Jamal, definitely look up his case. But I want you, when you get a chance to, family, look up the Jericho movement. Jericho, like the Jericho is a city in the Bible. The Jericho movement. Okay, this organization lists all the political prisoners that are serving time. All the political prisoners that are serving time. The Jericho movement. I think their site is the JerichoMovement.org or .com. But Google it, Jericho movement. It'll pop up. But it provides the names and addresses of our brothers and sisters who are still languishing in prison. Of course, recently we had members of Move 6 organization out of Philadelphia, Mumia Abu Jamal. One of the reasons he was framed is because he was investigating the Philadelphia police harassment of the Move organization. Look up the Move organization. Look up Jalil Muttaqin. Okay, we are our own liberators. He wrote a book. He was released, and I think they tried to get him on a parole. Recently, they tried to get him on a parole violation. They tried to bring him back. But look up the plight of Black political prisoners. But once again, look up the Jericho movement. And point number 9 is actually dealing with, point number 8, is actually dealing with the plight of our political prisoners. And many Black political prisoners are original Panthers. Many of them, Mumia was a Panther. Okay, Huey P. Newton served time as a political prisoner. The Free Huey campaign. Bobby Seale served as a political prisoner. But so many of them, okay, across the country. Jamil Alameen, remember, original Panther, he's currently serving time. We're going to move on as we get ready to wind down. Point number 9, we want all Black people, family, we want all Black people, when brought to trial, to be tried in a court by a jury of their peer group or people from their Black communities as defined by white law of the Constitution of the United States. We believe that the court should follow their own law if their nature will allow, as is stated in their Constitution of the United States, so that Black people will receive fair trials. The 6th Amendment of the United States Constitution gives a man and woman a right to an impartial trial, which has been interpreted to be a fair trial, we put that in quote, by one's peer group, quote. A peer is a person from a similar economic, social, religious, geographical, environmental, historical, and racial background. To do this, the court will be forced to select a jury from the Black community from which the Black defendant came. We have been and are being tried by all white juries that have no understanding of the average reasoning person of the Black community. Something that Attorney Shabazz has said before. Black people, African Americans, when you get these jury notices, serve on juries, okay? Don't avoid them, because it's important that our people, receive fair trials. But when you get these jury notices, investigate, but make sure that you serve in these juries with our people, because we want to make sure that they are given just trials. That's something that Attorney Shabazz said a long time ago. Okay, don't avoid it, check out the case. Don't try to find an excuse, because it might be someone, for example, that brother Khalid Browder. I don't want to use him as an example, but because I don't think, he never saw a jury, but he ended up he was at Rikers Island. He was accused of stealing a backpack, and the abuse that he got at Rikers Island, eventually he was let go because the case was nonsense. He ended up killing himself. But we have to make sure that in cases like that, whether it be murder trials or petty thief or arson, whatever, we have to make sure that, that our people, if a rich white woman, okay, from Beverly Hills steals something, okay, we want to make sure that just like she gets 5 years, a sister from Beverly Hills, same economic background or lower economic background, also gets 5 years. You get what I'm saying. So this is why it's important that we have a revolutionary-minded Black jurors to serve on these juries. Don't avoid the notices now. Don't avoid the notices. Okay, it's important for us to, and also to family. This is why, we need more Black attorneys. So make sure you support the organization, Black Lawyers for Justice and the National Bar Association. Okay, now, not to be confused, just to let you know, you have the American Bar Association. That's primarily white lawyers. But then you have the National Bar Association. And, that's for Black lawyers. And then, of course, you have Black Lawyers for Justice, and then you have the National Black Lawyers of America. If I'm saying it right, I believe it's National Black Lawyers of America. But you definitely have Black Lawyers for Justice, which was founded by Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz. Okay, so my thing is, if you're thinking about going to graduate school and you're Black and revolutionary minded, consider going into law school, not just to be a defense attorney. We need some revolutionary minded Black prosecutors to make sure that, that we're all going to jail or getting the same sentence. You understand where I'm coming from? We have to have revolutionary Black prosecutors. Brothers and sisters, don't jump on the Black, don't criticize a Black prosecutor, because you have a lot prolific Black prosecutors and Black and Black judges across the country that make sure that the law is carried out equally and fairly. But, you know, we have to be very careful. Don't call everyone a sellout. Stop calling everyone a boule Negro. Okay. You know, a lot of us do that within the conscious movement. We accuse everyone of being a sellout, even Black defense attorneys. No, we have to encourage. If you're able to go to law school and if you're Black and you're able to go to law school, we encourage you to apply to law school because, you know, we need you in these courts, making sure, you know, we've had many attorneys, keep in mind, you know, many of us know Attorney Malik Zulus. We call him the attorney at war, but the first one to have that title was Brother Alton Maddox out of New York City. Brother Alton Maddox, he was the first one to have that title. Okay, Attorney Malik Zulus, he comes in that tradition. Okay, Alton Maddox become well acquainted with him. Unfortunately, he was disbarred. He was involved with the Tawana Brawley case and Reverend Al Sharpton, and he actually lost his license behind that. But he was the first attorney of war. But throughout our history, we've had many Black revolutionary attorneys. Okay, make sure. So we're encouraging you. But anyway, family. Okay, we're going to end with point number 10 because we got to go. We have maybe 2 minutes left. Okay, so point number 10. And once again, this actually goes back to what we've been discussing with having revolutionary attorneys, defense attorneys, and revolutionary prosecutors and revolutionary judges. We demand an end to the racist death penalty as it is applied to Black and oppressed people in America. We demand freedom for all political prisoners of the Black, red, and brown nation. Wow, I just touched on that in point number 9. Free them all, free them all. We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. And as our political objective, we want national liberation in a separate state or territory of our own, here or elsewhere, a liberated zone, New Africa or Africa, and a plebiscite to be held throughout the Black nation in which only we will be allowed to participate for the purposes of determining our will and divine destiny as a people. Free the land of you mighty nation. You can accomplish what you will. Black power. Now, family, there were various organizations that touched on that. Garvey, Elijah Muhammad, the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa. You know, we missed Dr. Omari Overdeli, Ibaye, Ashe.
Excuse me, brother.
Yes, sir.
You can take your time.
Okay, family.
All right.
I appreciate it, brother. But on this topic here, it's point number 10. History has proven that the white man is absolutely disagreeable to get along with in peace. No one has been able to get along with the white man. That, once again, is Elijah Muhammad's teaching, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teaching, Master Elijah Muhammad. All the people of color have been subjected to the white man's wrath. We believe that his very nature will not allow for true sharing, fairness, equity, and justice. Therefore, to the red man and woman, to the yellow and to the brown, we say to you, the same rabid dog that bit you, bit us too. All power to the people. You know, Brother Malcolm spoke on this after he came back from Mecca. He spoke about a world revolution that included all Black people. And Malcolm said in this speech, I believe it was 64, 65, it was after he came back from Mecca, even though by that time, Malcolm had said many negative things about Elijah Muhammad, he was still borrowing heavily from Elijah Muhammad's teaching, and of course, from Garvey's teaching, by saying that Malcolm specified, he said that when he says Black, and of course, there are many people within the Pan-Africanist and conscious circles that would disagree with Malcolm, that Black would be anyone that isn't white. When he spoke about that revolution, of course, you see that here in point number 10. Something I wanted to address. Here we go. Okay, yes, the plebiscite. Now, what is a plebiscite? A plebiscite is like a discussion, like a vote, in which we decide, or, should we separate or should we not? See, the thing that gets me, as I said at the beginning of the broadcast, or in the middle of the broadcast, whenever I'm at these whenever I attend these meetings that are put on by Black professionals, whenever you mention the idea of separating from America, separating from the Democratic Party, separating from the Republican Party, separating from America, AKA separating from white people, and you don't even have to say separate from white people, but they know what you're talking about, or assume that's what you mean. you get tremendous pushback, which it brings us to our psychological dependence on whiteness, we as Black people. And oftentimes, organizations or the philosophies of organizations such as the Black Panther Party, New Black Panther Party, Nation of Islam, Republic of New Africa, the All African Revolutionary People's Party, that is obscured. Watch what happens next month when Black History Month comes around. And with the exception of Black folk like us that subscribe to this, watch the attempt to not mention anything about Black nationalism. And when they do mention Black nationalism, they only mention Brother Malcolm. And what do they say about Malcolm? Oh, Malcolm believed the white man is the devil, or white people are devils. He went to Mecca, saw white people, and he decided to embrace white people as his brothers. Okay? Because Malcolm is the face of Black nationalism, but they use him to discredit Black nationalism. What they don't say about Malcolm X 1964 trip to Mecca is that afterward, okay, but that was his most important trip as a Muslim, making Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. But it was his most important trip as a nationalist and as a Pan-Africanist. This is when he met with the African heads of state. They don't talk about that. We only talk about Mecca, white people. Malcolm meets with the African heads of state. He addresses, as an observer, he addresses, I believe, a meeting of the Organization of African Unity, which was started in Ethiopia. And one of the co-founders of that movement was His Excellency Haile Selassie Ashe, and of course Kwame Nkrumah. Malcolm gets the idea to form the Organization of Afro-American Unity, the charter of which was written by he and Dr. John Henry Clark on the floor of Dr. Clark's house in Harlem. Okay, so although Malcolm, he mentions he saw white Muslims, but that trip abroad, which by the way, that wasn't Malcolm's first time visiting Africa or the so-called Middle East. As the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's national representative, Malcolm had been traveling back and forth to the Islamic world into Africa. He did it a few times. Okay, Malcolm spoke about that. Okay, but it merely enhanced, it increased his nationalism, his Pan-Africanism. Okay, and that's why he formed the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Make no mistake about it, Malcolm X was not an integrationist. You keep pushing the whole idea of integrationist in the whole Black narrative. There are many Black people that don't believe in integration or assimilationism. Okay, there are many Black people who believe in Pan-Africanism and Black nationalism, separating. Malcolm was still a Black nationalist. He was still a Pan-Africanist. Just read his autobiography. He said that, that my first concern is the people that I come from at that time, the 20 or so million Afro-Americans who were being oppressed. And so family, it looks like, brother, that's about all I can say. I hope that you all were very satisfied by my presentation. I wonder if we have any comments. Anyone on Facebook? Facebook Live, let me see. Do we have any questions? I might have to go to Facebook. So I gotta go to Dr. Shabazz's page real quick. Let's see if anyone has any questions. We're streaming right now. Oh, we have 74 comments. Okay. Wow. We have any questions? Any questions? Okay, well, I see we have, wait a minute, it says 74 comments. Hold on now. Actually, family, I'm very thankful to be joining you all tonight. This is what I do. Oh, Brother Harvey, who is this here? Queen Mother. For all of those of you that are listening in on Facebook, thank you very much for tuning in. Sister Lois, I got Brother Rodrigo. Of course, we have the Attorney at War, Dr. Maliz Jabaz, Suki Shakur. Thank you very much for tuning in, but it said we had 74 comments. I'm sorry, I got a little confused. I'm trying to, well, thank you, Sister Lois, I appreciate it. While I love Black women, I'm trying to figure out if we have any questions. That said we have 74 comments. 74 comments and 100 Says we have 110 shares. Oh, tonight was a good night. Oh, thank you, Sister Renee. Peace. I'm sorry, Sister Khalida. Sister Khalida, thank you, beloved. Peace. You know, we're in that. Oh, I wanted to announce this too while I'm here. From April 29th, concerning, tonight we had mentioned Amir Baraka. And we're talking about self-determination. Next, April 29th to May the 1st, I'm one of the organizers. I'm on the media committee. We're having the 50th commemoration of the Black Political Convention that was originally held in 1972 in Gary, Indiana. And Amir Baraka was a key organizer. That there were many people there. Reverend Jesse Jackson, Minister Louis Farrakhan, so many people. I'm saying there are people who were still alive and well who were there. Chokwe Lumumba, Ashe, Larry Ham out of New Jersey. He heads the People's Organization for Progress. But on the committee, the planning committee, you have Mayor Ras Baraka, who was the son of Amiri Baraka, and you have Mayor Chokwe Lumumba II, who was the son of our brother, Mayor Chokwe Lumumba out of Jackson, Mississippi. Our brother had passed on, Mayor Lumumba, the father had passed on right after he'd been elected, Ashe. And I was actually supposed to speak with him on air right before he had passed on. That was in 2014, I believe he left us. But also on that planning committee is educator Bashir Mohammed Fatah Akinyele out of Newark, New Jersey. He's an educator as well as a radio host and a producer of All Politics Are Local, which is a show created by Ed Riley, who's also on the planning committee, but is getting traction. But look up when you get a chance, the National Black Political Convention.org. We have a website. I'm on the planning committee of that. And Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz has definitely been invited. We're trying to get him to speak. Dr. Umar Johnson is scheduled to be there. So many people. We're inviting Black people from different sides of the spectrum, of course. For those of you who may not know, that conference, the original conference, there were actually two, one in 1972, and then you had another one right after that convened. But most people are not even aware of the first one. This was when Shirley Chisholm, Ashe, was running for president, Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm. And at this conference, they were thinking, they actually had the debate of whether or not they were going to endorse her. And there was a controversy there regarding Sister Shirley, Ms. Chisholm. There's a big controversy. She wanted the nomination of the Democratic Party, and she wasn't at the conference. As a matter of fact, the convention, she wasn't there. But of course, throughout time, there have been several conferences in the past several decades in which Black people had demanded, they got together to attempt to grab political power. And there was even talks at this convention. Of course, there have been attempts in years past of the formation of a Black political party. And of course, it wasn't the first time that this was discussed, but that was one of the plans that was supposed to come out of that one. So this one here is going to be the 50th anniversary of it. So make sure you're in attendance. We're talking about self-determination as a part of the 10-point platform. That right there is an example of self-determination. Okay, so we hope that you, if not attend, we hope that you actually definitely look it up. I hope that my presentation was satisfactory, family, but I'm going to wind down now. I think I've said just about all I can say. I'm looking in the comments, questions. Well, Brother Ahmad, thank you, Brother Ahmad. I appreciate it. I'm dealing with this cough. No, it's not Omicron. Me and my mother, we suffer from year-round allergies. So I'm good, family. I'm good. Okay. We have Justice Allah, peace, Lord. Family, thank you very much. I'm Dashan Farad, and you can look me up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm a journalist. My background, I work with Dr. Boyce Watkins at yourblackworld.net. I'm also the communications director for the Washington, D.C. based Foresight for Life. But make sure, you follow me, but at the same time, I'm standing in tonight for those of you who are watching this broadcast for the first time. I'm standing in tonight for attorney, Dr. Malik Zulu Shabazz. He's the national chairman of the new Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. He is also the founder and executive director for Black Lawyers for Justice, both organizations based in the Washington, D.C. area, okay, DMV. So, make sure you support your local Black organization. And remember, as Kwame Ture stated, okay, either join an organization or start an organization, but organize, organize, organize. I'm seeing, thank you very much for joining me. Hotep, peace, Black power.